All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the brilliant, dramatic narrative of the Bhagavad-gītā. And what's really fascinating here is that this epic story doesn't actually kick off with a physical fight. It starts with a massive, deeply human breakdown. Picture this. Before a single arrow even flies, before the earth literally shakes under the weight of these two massive assembling armies, a much deeper war begins inside one man. His name is Arjuna. He's absolutely one of the greatest warriors of his age, but as the war horns and conch shells sound across the sacred field of Kurukṣetra, his hands start to tremble. So what begins as a battlefield crisis rapidly transforms into what is arguably one of the most stunning spiritual dialogues in world history.
I mean, really think about that for a second. What do you do when literally every choice feels like a betrayal? This brilliantly captures that universal human experience of total decision paralysis. Arjuna asks his charioteer, who happens to be none other than Śrī Kṛṣṇa, to drive their chariot right out into the middle, perfectly between the two armies. He wants to see exactly who he's up against. But when he looks across the line, he doesn't see nameless enemies. He sees his own grandfather. He sees his beloved teachers. He sees his cousins and childhood friends. So before the very first blow is even struck, Arjuna is hit with a paralyzing moral crisis. Duty is standing right behind him, pushing him forward. But profound, gut-wrenching grief is standing right in front of him. And his bow just slips from his hands.
So, here's our roadmap for exploring this ancient masterpiece today. We'll be tracking Arjuna's epic hero's journey across 6 distinct stages: the battlefield of the soul, wisdom of the eternal self, the path of selfless action, the cosmic revelation, surrender and transformed duty, and finally, authenticity and author.
Let's jump right into part 1, the battlefield of the soul. The way this story is framed is just so cool. It's actually narrated through a mystic named Sanjaya, who gets this divine vision so he can describe the battlefield live to a blind king sitting far away in a palace. And through Sanjaya's eyes, we get this incredible contrast. The outer world is entirely primed for war, right? Banners are flying, armor is shining, dust is swirling everywhere. But the inner world, Arjuna's inner world, is completely collapsing. His whole identity as a warrior just shatters because he realizes that fulfilling his so-called duty actually means destroying his own society. So the real takeaway here is that our hero doesn't begin confident. Actually, scratch that. He is thoroughly broken before the battle even starts. Arjuna drops his bow, literally sinks down into his chariot, and just openly admits, "I can't do this. I cannot fight." His mouth is dry, his mind is spinning. And this teaches us something incredibly profound, something we can all relate to. True spiritual learning often kicks in at the exact moment our old certainties completely fail us. The Gita doesn't start with a guy who has it all figured out. It starts with a broken man desperately asking what to do when every single option just brings pain. Moving into our second section, wisdom of the eternal self. After trying to argue his way out of it, Arjuna makes a massive pivot. He stops arguing and he surrenders. He bows his head and formally accepts his charioteer, Śrī Kṛṣṇa, as his guide. And just like that, this chaotic, roaring battlefield turns into a quiet classroom. Now, Krishna doesn't just give Arjuna a quick pep talk. No, he completely reorders Arjuna's entire understanding of reality. He starts with the most fundamental truth of all. The real self is not this temporary physical body. The body goes through childhood, youth, old age, and yeah, eventually it fades. But the soul is this luminous, eternal spark that just keeps going. It's honestly a lot like the first law of thermodynamics, right? Energy can't be created or destroyed, it only changes form. So Krishna explains that grief based solely on a temporary physical identity is just fundamentally incomplete. You literally cannot kill the soul. And because of that, the wise are not shattered by these temporary changes.
Which brings us to section 3, the path of selfless action.
Now, this philosophy brilliantly bridges ancient wisdom straight into our modern struggles with work, ambition, and burnout. Because obviously the big question is, well, if the body is just temporary, shouldn't we just stop acting altogether, just give up? Krishna answers with a hard no. You literally can't avoid action. Even just breathing and maintaining your body is an action. Instead, he reveals this incredible progression of disciplines, a hero's journey for the mind. First, there's karma yoga, acting without selfish attachment to the results. Think of it as the ultimate ancient productivity hack. You do the hard work, but you completely detach yourself from the crushing, paralyzing anxiety of the outcome. Then he introduces dhyana yoga, the intense practice of mind control, which finally culminates in bhakti yoga. This is where action is actually transformed. It goes from selfish desire into a purifying, loving service directed toward the supreme. But, as always, there's a catch. A massive obstacle on this path. Before Arjuna can even think about fighting the enemy outside, he has to conquer the wild horses of his own senses. Krishna hits the nail on the head here. The real enemies are internal. It works like this. Desire starts off simple, just a tiny attraction, but the second it gets blocked, boom, it twists into anger. And that anger creates this dark smoke that totally confuses our memory and wrecks our intelligence. So to win the outer war, Arjuna essentially has to tame the shadow versions of his own fear and rage. To help him understand this inner enemy, Krishna breaks material nature down into 3 distinct currents: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Goodness is clear and light, but watch out because it can still trap you through an attachment to your own comfort and happiness. Then there's passion. That's the red fire driving us to rush around, constantly seeking gain and endless ambition. Finally, ignorance is just this dark, heavy fog of confusion and laziness. And the crazy thing is, all human behavior is constantly rising and falling under the influence of these powerful, invisible currents. This whole feeling of being entangled in the world is captured in this incredibly vivid visual metaphor, the upside-down banyan tree. Just imagine a massive, sprawling tree, but its roots are up in the sky and its branches are growing downward, deep into our world. We are all caught up in those vines, desperately chasing the glowing fruits of our material desires. Krishna tells Arjuna that the only way to get free is to take the sword of detachment and violently hack away those vines, clearing a path upward.
All right, let's step into section 4, the cosmic revelation.
This right here is the absolute climax of the story. Arjuna has learned about the eternal soul, the nature of action, and the traps of his own mind. His casual friendship with Krishna has deepened into this profound, awestruck reverence. And that leads to a totally astonishing, kind of terrifying request. Arjuna asks to see Krishna's true divine form, and Krishna grants it. He gives Arjuna divine vision, and instantly the ordinary battlefield just vanishes into a cosmic explosion. Arjuna sees a reality way beyond ordinary sight. We're talking countless faces, infinite arms wielding weapons, multiplying suns, and entire galaxies all contained within one single overwhelming reality. He even sees time itself acting as this massive destructive force, literally drawing all the warriors on the battlefield into the blazing mouths of destiny. It's breathtaking. It is simultaneously the most beautiful and deeply, deeply frightening thing you could imagine. And it completely humbles the great warrior. So Arjuna is just overwhelmed. He's trembling and he literally begs for forgiveness. Because suddenly he's remembering all those times he treated Krishna casually, just as a buddy or an equal, totally oblivious to the staggering cosmic magnitude sitting right next to him in the chariot. He begs Krishna to return to a form he can actually comprehend without his mind breaking. And out of pure compassion, Krishna withdraws that blazing universal form and returns to his gentle, two-armed, personal form. It's such a beautiful moment because it perfectly balances the terrifying cosmic majesty of the universe with this accessible, loving intimacy. The Supreme isn't just a terrifying force of nature, it's a friend you can actually speak to. Let's look at section 5, surrender and transformed duty. So Krishna takes these massive cosmic visions and grounds them right back down into practical, everyday human behavior. He contrasts what he calls divine and demonic qualities. The divine path, that's paved with fearlessness, compassion, and humility. But the demoniac path is dragged down by arrogance, anger, and harshness. Essentially, Krishna is showing Arjuna that this massive physical war they're about to fight at Kurukṣetra, it actually perfectly mirrors a moral war that is raging inside every single person. Every single day, we have to wake up and choose which of these 2 wolves we're going to feed. And here we reach the ultimate resolution. Empowered by this incredible instruction, Arjuna's memory is fully restored. The fog of confusion is completely gone. Now, he doesn't stand up to fight because the idea of war has suddenly become pleasant. It hasn't. He rises with stunning clarity because his consciousness is finally aligned. Krishna didn't tell him to run away to a cave in the forest. The message was, do not run from your duty just because it's painful. Transform that duty through devotion. Do the work, not out of your own ego, but as an offering, as a service to the Supreme.
Finally, we arrive at section 6, authenticity, author, and reflection.
Stepping out of the narrative for a second, we really need to look at how this ancient song of divine wisdom reached the modern world. This specific explainer is based on an edition called Bhagavad-gītā as it is. And what makes this version stand out from the crowd is its absolute scholarly transparency. It doesn't just hand you a loose poetic summary. It gives you the original Sanskrit text, the Roman transliteration, and a strict word-for-word English translation. Plus, it's transmitted through something called parampara, which is an unbroken chain of disciplic succession. It represents a living, tradition-grounded Gaudiya Vaishnava devotional perspective. That means it avoids all the modern, personal speculation and just presents the ancient bhakti, the devotional understanding, exactly as it was intended to be heard.
The author who translated and brought this highly authentic message to a massive global audience was A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And honestly, his own story is a hero's journey in its own right. Born in Calcutta in 1896, he eventually traveled to the West in 1965. Get this, at the stunning age of 69, he crossed the ocean on a cargo ship to New York City with practically nothing in his pockets. By 1966, he formally founded the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and he dedicated the entire remainder of his life to sharing these profound texts and the practice of devotion with the whole world.
So as we reflect on all of this, the biggest takeaway is that the Bhagavad-gītā is way more than just an ancient war story. It is literally the ultimate psychological and spiritual blueprint. It's this incredibly raw, honest look at a human being totally breaking down under the weight of impossible choices, receiving the highest possible wisdom, and then rising back up with a completely transformed understanding of life, of duty, and of reality itself. Because when the dust of our own lives finally settles, we realize something huge. The greatest victory isn't over some external army. It's not over an annoying coworker or a difficult situation. The absolute greatest victory is over the illusions of our own minds. Which brings me to a question I want to leave you with. If the real battlefield is actually your own consciousness, what qualities are you feeding in your inner war today? Are you feeding the divine or are you feeding the shadow? The choice is entirely yours. Thank you so much for joining me on this profound journey through the Bhagavad-gītā. I truly hope this explainer gives you the clarity, the detachment, and the epic devotion you need to face and absolutely conquer your own battlefields.